Hi. I can speak about big market and big domestic market. I can speak about population. Israel is a very small country in the Middle East. But I can speak about technology, innovation, and speak about a country that, though it's very, very small, it has the highest density of startups in the world, and it's leading per capita the number of investments in the world. So let me present myself first. So I'm an active venture partner at Rhodium. I'm involved with several companies as a board member, as an investor. In the past, I was a venture capitalist. I also headed the Israeli Venture Capital Association and the Israeli High-Tech Industry Association, which represent the whole ecosystem of the Israeli high-tech. I live in Silicon Valley for the past 3 years and involved a lot in the in the local high-tech scene. About Rhodium, Rhodium is an investment arm of one of the most known Israeli families. The Rekanati, it's like the Israeli Rockefellers. They have a legacy of about 80 years of building the economy in Israel, building the biggest holding companies like IDB, Klal, and then high-tech. So they've been involved with most of the big companies in Israel in those years. And Rhodium was founded by the fourth generation, by Daniel Rekanati, to invest in early-stage companies in Israel and Silicon Valley and New York. Some of our portfolio companies includes Outbrain, Face.com that was acquired by Facebook, Hopstop, Yotpo, Zoos, Ilmo, Chosen, and others. We screen about 1,600 deals every year. About 1,000 of them comes from Israel, so we have a very good perspective about Israel comparing to Silicon Valley. So let's go back to speak about Israel. It's a very tiny country, makes lots of noise, has lots of innovation. If you look at it in the map, it's just really a small dot on the map. But yet, if you look at the bigger screen, then you see a map of Tel Aviv with hundreds of startups, hundreds of R&D centers and investors, all in 30 minutes of north to south. How many of you have read this book, Startup Nation? Anyone in the audience? So some of you, okay. So for those of you who haven't read this book, but this is really the best propaganda book about Israel since the Bible. But for those of you who haven't, so I just want to, just like my previous speaker, just to tell you that Israel is not what you have in, the image of Israel is out of the news, so just to break this thing. So some people think about the peace process, and some people even think that we ride camels to work, which we don't. Israel is much different. It's rave parties on the great beaches of Tel Aviv. It's global companies like Google, IBM, Facebook, and others. It's traffic jams at 4 a.m. in the morning, and it's one Bar Rafaeli. I don't know if you know her. Some cool facts about Israel that you might not know. So Israel has the cows of Israel produce the most milk in the world. We have the highest ratio of museums per person. Solar power, well, we are in the Middle East, we are in the desert, so we use it for many years. Tel Aviv has the highest ratio of sushi. And if you drink milk, you go to a museum, you use solar, and you eat sushi, you're probably very strong in academics. So Israel produced also the highest number of scientific papers per capita. Some things that affects your life, on your daily life, and I guess you didn't know, that came from Israel. So the first cellular phone, part of it was developed in Israel. The text message, we mentioned before ICQ, the first instant message. Kinect was developed by PrimeSense, that was later acquired by Apple. Discon Key was developed in Israel. Intel is very active in Israel with lots of their innovation. Security, the first PC virus was found in Israel called Jerusalem, and the first antivirus was also developed in Israel. Google has a very strong R&D team in Israel that made the automatic search completion. In medical, we have some interesting developments, such as the rewalk that enables people to walk again, and so on and so on and so. And the reason for that is that Israel is basically #1 in R&D spending, in scientific research, in public spending on education, in business innovation, in cybersecurity and entrepreneurship, regardless of its size. So what is unique about Israel? How come this country in the Middle East became such a technological hub? So Israel is very similar to Silicon Valley in many terms. It has a very strong ecosystem that creates innovation from different sources. So the first of all is the academic institutes, very strong academic background. The R&D centers in Israel, coming from about 300 multinational companies, is another source. Unlike Silicon Valley, the Israeli military is another source for innovation. And all this innovation can get good feeding from a very strong and developed venture capital ecosystem. Let's start with the academy. Israel, though it's small, again, is 3 of the best 5 universities in Israel are ranked in the top 100 universities in the world. Israel is ranked on top on scientific infrastructure, in technological infrastructure, in very high availability of engineers and scientists. A lot of patents are being done in Israel. And although it's 8 million people, it produced 8 Nobel Prize winners. The military is good and bad, but it's considered the secret source of the Israeli high tech. Elite technical units creates and build good teams that are in the front of technology. The army is not the typical army in Israel. Hierarchy is not the strong thing. So I was a captain in the Israeli army, and I think it's the only army that you listen to. Every soldier has like what to think and to advise to you. This brings a lot of innovation because it's thinking out of the box, a lot of chutzpah, and this brings groups of people who leave the army and fund and create new companies. Checkpoint was one of them. Saragon from another unit. So the army itself is a good talent provider to the Israeli high tech. The third is almost 300 multinational companies that opened R&D centers in Israel in the past years, including the biggest names: Facebook, SanDisk, Apple, Microsoft, IBM, which was the first one, eBay, and Samsung, and others. And this creates the whole cycle of acquisition of companies, and then people stay 2 years, then establish the next company. But this won't work without a very strong investment ecosystem. So Israel, we all the time say per capita. So Israel in per capita is has the highest investment of venture capitals per capita, is 2.5 times the US, 30 times Europe. And even in actual absolute numbers, it's over, I think, I need to check the previous slides, but it's over China in 2013. And if Israel was a state in the US, it would probably be the 4th after Silicon Valley, New England, and New York. What's nice about Israel is that it has a very strong vibe and energy. And in the past 3 years, Israel is producing 2 startup companies per day. But this is not the story. The story is how many of those companies continue later on. And out of the 7,000 companies that were established in Israel in the past 10 years, about 4,000 continue later on, which is a very high ratio compared to any other country. Israel is second only to Silicon Valley in number of startups per square foot. Israeli VCs raised about $15 billion. $26 billion were invested in the past 16 years. And this created ROI of about $80 billion in exits. If we look at the trends, the current trends in the Israeli investment landscape, so the main difference is that foreign investors are becoming the dominant investors. More than 80%, roughly 85% of the investments come from foreign investors. All the guys from Sandy Road are very active in Israel. The Israeli funds themselves are shrinking in a way because of that. Yet the early stage investments are increasing. It's about 50% of the total investments, and 80% of those seed to A is an up round, is up rounds. However, we still expect a crunch in Israel because of most of the early investments comes from the local investors. So the environment, it looks like a triangle. In the top, you see the angels, the local investors, the small investors. After that, you see the micro VC funds, very active in Israel, raised about $200, $300 million in the past years. Below that, there is the big local investors. Some of them are offices and funds that came from the US, such as Sequoia and Greylock, that both has dedicated Israeli fund, very successful both. And on the top, on the bottom, there are all the mega funds that are active in Israel, and all those big names that you all know: Excel, Battery, Bessemer, Canaan, Index, and others. And what they are looking for is mostly internet. They invest in internet communication, some life science, not so much in semiconductors. Israel, just like others, is anti-semi. But yet there's lots of investments in high-tech, mostly in internet. So those are the names that you all know. The other side is the Israeli most notable VCs, such as Pitango, Carmel, and Magma. What happened to the Israeli VC industry is that in the past years, it's been shrinking. It's been into 6 cycles. And one of the reasons for that is that 95% of the investors, the LPs in the Israeli venture capital industry, are non-Israelis. And for now, some of them prefer to invest through the Sandy Road guys instead of investing in Israeli VCs. However, the performance of the Israeli high-tech there's nothing to be ashamed of. 1,000 deals, about 80 billion of exits. Unicorns, everybody's talking about unicorns, so it's not such a rare animal in Israel. Some of the recent companies who made public or had exits, Wix and Veronis both had IPO that was with market cap that was over $1 billion. And we're expecting some more, like Mobileye, that according to the press is going to have the largest Israeli IPO ever. And again, based on the press, is Outbrain. And the pipeline is very impressive as well. We have about 164 companies with over $25 million in revenues. And we see all the big names acquiring companies in Israel. Some of them are very, very active, such as Cisco that acquired 10, IBM 12, Apple and Facebook. They are very active in acquiring companies in Israel. And those are the companies that recently made IPO from Israel. Israel for years been the 3rd largest country in NASDAQ with number of listed companies, now after China. And the exit comes from different areas. Though there are not so many investments in semiconductors, about 20% of the exits in the past years came from this area. The interesting thing is that consumer is growing, like Check that was acquired by Intuit and Waze that was acquired by Google. Israel is always very strong with storage and security. So some of the Extreme IO and Trustea are in this area. Those are it's a big slide with lots of names. But those are the ones who made exits in the past 2 years, and also the ones that we expect to make exits in the next year or so. So we can see names like Fiverr, Kenshu, Superfish, Clarizen, Yotpo, SolarEdge, Zoos, and others. In terms of performance, so because there's a lot of capital efficiency in Israel, so the ratio is for Israel is much better. And we can see some example of it, like Intucell that raised $6.5 million from Bessemer, had about roughly 50% of the company and was acquired for $475 million by Cisco. Why Israel, why now? So higher chance for success. There's lots of second-timers entrepreneurs in Israel that this time wants to build the next $1 billion company. the ecosystem has matured, and we have much more money coming from more experienced investors from Sandal Road. It's a very pro-investors ecosystem. We can say that Israeli A round is equivalent to seed round in terms of size and valuation. Available talent is you can compare it to Silicon Valley. It's about, there's no competition on talent as it's here, and for that, the cost of talents is about 30% less. And because we don't have a domestic market, it's global from day one. The changes are bringing those startup nations into building big companies that are built to last. And I think the last thing would be how to work with Israelis, because the biggest gap is culturally. And some things about Israelis that some of you who knows Israeli know it, is that no BS, no politics, just clearly set of goals and get them done. Good news is thinking out of the box. Every Israeli has very strong opinion about basically everything. Help each other out, prefer to cut corners, very direct, say what they think, don't get insulted. Love to argue, hate hierarchy, love challenges and dislike wasted talents. And the last is just to give an example of how Israeli and Americans understand each other. So an Israeli employee works for an American boss, and the boss is furious of something, and he gets to him and tells him, I think we may have a slight problem here. So here's how the Israeli guy understands it. I think, well, the boss is not sure there's a problem, first of all. It's not my problem. He's probably in the same boat. We may not have a problem, and slight problem is probably a very minor thing. So when you work with Israelis, you must keep this in mind. But yet, though there's some cultural gaps, those guys usually knows how to bring big companies, a lot of innovation, a lot of execution. It's definitely a place to look for your next investment and to work with. So thank you very much.